I want it either you go either first or last.
That's right.
There's nothing in between.
Well, hopefully my interviewing skills will be up to par here on the last one that we're doing.
And mine as well. But
Yeah.
I'm here.
We're going to look at each other, but
Oh,
we want to talk as much into the mic as we can. So,
And
and the camera's right there. You don't ever have to look at that. You can look at me if you want. So,
Gotcha.
Jim Collison, we're here at Heartland Developer Conference 2018 in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm here with Vlad Georgiev.
That was pretty good.
Pretty bad. Pretty bad. But I appreciate
a lot
you.
better than Georgia.
Okay, well, I appreciate you being patient with me. Why don't we do a quick introduction? You can pronounce it the correct way.
Okay.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do, those kinds of, just so folks can get to know you a little bit.
General questions.
Yeah.
I work at Warner. I'm a DevOps engineer. Joined them recently. Have a considerable number of years in various IT roles. But I recently jumped on the DevOps, embraced the role, and started doing the magic.
Yeah, the magic that is DevOps.
That is DevOps, exactly.
Yeah, I think sometimes, well, first of all, pronounce your last name correctly.
Okay. Vladimir Georgiev.
That sounds so great. I love the accent. Thanks for doing that for me. It's one of my favorite accents of all time.
We can tell the story that I just told. How I show up in New York some time ago, and my boss interviewing me gave me that name, Vlad Georgiev. I was like, okay, I'm not going to argue. You're just going to hand me a job. So I'm Vlad Georgiev. But a few months back, I go to Mexico, and everybody's Mr. Georgiev. And I'm like, how did you know?
Yeah, and all the Americans are like, I don't hear the difference. So... for whatever, well, we read it George because Georg, right? So a real famous name here in the United States.
Yes.
DevOps. Let me ask you about this because I think DevOps is a mystery to some people still.
It is.
So if you would, how do you define DevOps? What is that for you?
Okay, so I'm not sure about a definition that is going to be more than Dev and Ops working together.
Yeah.
Against.
Why is it a thing? Like, why do we call it DevOps, and why is it a thing?
Well, a little bit of the history, the major conflict between Dev and Ops. Ops trying to have stable environments, while Devs pushing changes for changes all the time, the newest and the latest. We want it in production. That inevitable conflict was for a very long time without any resolution. DevOps tries to resolve the conflict mostly, at least in my mind, by giving the two before that siloed functional units common goals. So what is the common goal that everybody can get behind, that you can get the stability of an environment, but you can also release software, useful software, as fast as possible, as safely as possible.
Yeah.
So that conflict is resolved by DevOps in my mind.
Yeah. So your session, tell us a little bit about what was it? Give us the title and then a little description.
So I was scaling DevOps. By that I mean two main things. We are scaling vertically, and we are scaling horizontally, DevOps at Warner, and we're doing that with infrastructure as code or pipeline as code implementation. We are. I gave a story about our DevOps journey. Everybody's talking about journeys. So we had first major iteration that we accomplished with a partner. They helped us set up, and a great number of successes. We managed to automate or semi-automate our CI/CD pipeline and environments and all of that good stuff. We, for example, integrated functional tests. We integrated database changes into our pipelines. And from speaking with a lot of my peers in other companies in the industry, I know that's not it's a very hard thing to achieve. And we had a series of other successes, mostly the fact that we've been doing it for the last almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
But with that came a series of problems, mostly due to the fact that we were set up with what they're called we're Jenkins Java shop. So I tried to give a more intimate look of what the company does and what our environments are and all of that. What type of company is Warner? So here for the record, Warner is not a trucking company, despite of what you may have heard. We're not a transportation company, and we're not a logistic company. We are a service company, and that, in my mind, carries a bunch of implications on how we do DevOps, how we do IT services, and all of that. So anyway, the problems were with these each pipeline, each application getting to production. The pipeline consisted of up to 20, in some case even 25 different build jobs that were only manageable on the front end, on the UI. So if I were to make a change, I have to open up the browser, go click, and do some change. Now we have about 25 applications times 20. We have over 500 jobs. That the example that I really like to give each time, if we had to change the SVN server for whatever reason, we lost our SVN server, we cannot get the same DNS, the same VIP for it. If we were to change that, I swear to God, we would probably have to change it in all 500 jobs. So obviously, it's unmaintainable. Also, it is not a scalable approach. Microservices, not bueno. It's not going to work. It simply will not work because I have one application, microservices architected application, with 18 sub-applications, microservices. If we were to take this approach, I have to create 360 new jobs. Clearly, that does not scale. And also, the way it was designed, the solution, the pipeline, was that DevOps team became the owners of it. The actual steps, the execution steps of what each thing does, what each job does, were hidden. They were hidden behind the interface. So nobody knew what was going on. Our team did not know what was going on, because if we did know, and when we started reviewing everything that was set up, it turned out that we were doing one of the biggest anti-patterns of DevOps. We were building our applications not once, but 4 times. It turned out that we were doing 140 steps for getting something to production. And a lot of those, as it turns out, were redundant. They were completely unnecessary.
Vlad, let me ask real quick. How did you know, like, what was the process to know these? You've got some solid numbers and you know the redundancy. How did you discover that? Like, what's the process of discovery?
We counted the steps. We documented
somebody just went
process.
physically through and just documented it. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. So we came up with 140 steps that were significant major steps in the end-to-end pipeline. And then we started looking. Well, why are we pulling from SVN at almost each of these jobs? Why are we uploading to Artifactory at each of these jobs? So there was a lot of input, output, unnecessary, as it turns out. When we redesigned and we started looking for a solution to that problem, the whole lack of visibility, the lack of transparency into what a job is, creating the silo, the fact that we have so many different steps, the fact that we cannot scale that approach, we first documented the steps. So, okay, this probably could be dealt away with. Let's look for a solution. The solution was pipeline as code. These are guys from Warner. They should know more about that. And so we started writing actual declarative code as a way to solve the problem. So no longer going through the UI, but we are writing actual code. It's a Groovy-based DSL that Jenkins supports. It's called scripted pipeline. And Everything is in source control. And this has an implication of what I'm calling horizontal scaling, because when it's checked in with the application, then everybody who's on the team can see the steps, and they're fairly straightforward. They're repeatable steps that basically say, stop the application, check if the application is stopped, start the application, or rather deploy the application, the new code, start it up, check if it started, and then we repeat that through our stages. So in any case, we increase visibility, transparency, everybody can see that, everybody can modify that. Everybody who has something to do with that application, obviously.
Yeah.
And check it in with source control. All the repeatable steps. My requirements were the following. I wanted to design an object-oriented, do not repeat yourself, observing patterns solution. So I did not want to write, copy, paste the same thing over and over and over. Yeah. So what we did was all of our functions, all of our methods, we abstracted away into a library that is commonly accessible by all the application pipelines. So if I were to change, however we were pulling from SVN, or if we were to replace that to Git, I would change it in one place alone. Also, along the lines of this object-oriented, do not repeat yourself pattern, all the global environment variables that are common across all the pipelines, we put in one place, that if I were to change the SVN server, I will change it in one place, and immediately that would be applied to all the applications that are consuming it. So in this way, smarter. Horizontal is the cultural element, the fact that we are scaling it to more people, more developers, the QA engineers, the DBAs, now are co-owners, hopefully collaborators as well.
Yeah. For those listening live or the recorded version, that was our Jenga tower falling in the background there.
So, some people like to have fun, but this is way more what we are doing.
way more important. But there are folks doing push-ups because
well, we will join soon after
this. Maybe so. Hey, so you make efficiencies in the code, makes it easier to get to, makes it easier to maintain. Developers know that, and even some of the managers do, but you got to sell this right to the folks that control the budget. What's the ROI on this? What's the sale? How do you justify it? How do you make it make sense to those that are paying the bills?
I don't have yet good numbers for that. Time will tell, but we know for a fact that we've gotten more control over our CI/CD pipelines.
Yeah, and that may be a justification on its own, right? Yeah. When we think about safety and security, when we think about update ability, when we think about how the resources we're going to need to maintain that code in the future, right? That can all be quantified.
And absolutely, I know for a fact that it takes us currently about 6 weeks to get a new pipeline, new application into the pipeline. Well, I'm not saying that the pipeline as code is going to resolve all of these handoffs and all of this lead times for provisioning a Viv, for provisioning a new database, user credentials, and all of that. But I know that whatever we control, and that is the developers and the ops team that controls releasing of software, I know that I can drop a file, change some properties, application properties, and I'll be up and running in production in a few minutes.
Yeah.
It becomes more of property management other than I have to go and change variables in so many places. Just the whole object-oriented approach helps us manage better and we gain a lot more control.
Yeah.
A lot of
my like quality too, right? I mean, you're
absolutely resiliency and quality of the application, the resiliency. So part of the effort when we started investigating of what we're doing, what problems we're trying, we're trying to do is we find out that we were building 4 times, and then we found out that we are sending an instruction, hey, stop the application, but we're never waiting to see if that instruction really took effect. We are studying the application, but guess what? I'm going to continue on the next step without first verifying that the application is fully up and running. Well, once we laid out the problem step process, we were able to pinpoint, oh, well, it would be really easy to introduce a loop. I'm going to just ping that application, and as soon as the URL is up and running, I would continue to the next step, but not before that. And if for whatever reason that fails, I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to continue. So to your point, both resiliency and quality of the application pipeline, the way we deliver software into production, is increasing. They're both on the up.
No, good. Yeah, and sometimes those are hard to measure. I mean,
sure.
The efficiencies, the quality.
Not really, but and part of my presentation talked about that. We still do insufficient. We do, frankly, a crappy job of reporting dashboard and all of that. But now that we know what our bottlenecks have been, we know that hopefully this will resolve a lot of these issues. We can focus. The fact that I don't have to manage 500 jobs, it will release some time that myself and my team, we can start looking into solution for reporting, for some sort of a documentation platform. We don't do any of that. It will have a net positive effect. I'm fairly confident that this transition is going to help.
Good, Vlad. Last question for you. What kind of questions do you get after a session like this? I mean, what are people coming and asking you about? What's the interest, or what kind of questions do people have for you after you do a session like this?
There was a question that I was asked about whether this approach can be taken to Warner is an on-prem IT shop. So somebody asked me whether we can take this approach to AWS or Azure, and I was like, well, yeah, why not? Right. If anything, going to the cloud would allow us to adopt infrastructure as code for all the missing pieces that we have right now, which is networking, which is database, which is opening up a port, security. All of these things end up being a script. They are an API being called that we are still doing manual.
Yeah.
The going to cloud is gonna help us adopt infrastructure as code throughout the company, all the functional units. It is my hope and my belief when we make that jump. But pipeline as code is as good on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. I don't really care. The goal should be if some terrific event happens and we lose our on-prem data center, we lose the backup through code, I should be up and running anywhere.
Yeah.
Again, the pieces, we have networking, server provision, and all of that. And that is a little bit outside of the scope of and purview of my department. But ideally, with infrastructure as code, with pipeline as code, you're up and running regardless of what environment, what platform your software runs.
And I would imagine, even in this situation, this could prep you, even if you're on-prem, but you're thinking about someday I've got to migrate to the cloud, that this would be great preparation, right? Because moving these would be so much less work, be better documented, better controls.
It's self-documented. Right? It's in code. If you want to see what the property is or what the exact steps of a stage are, go and look at the code.
Yeah.
That's why it's out there. It's in source control. Mm-hmm. It is self-documented. So that is one, and I lost my trail of thought of what the question was. What your comment was.
Oh, no, the comment was that would make getting to the cloud easier.
Yeah.
Right. The preparation of doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
When you were on an unplug on-prem, plug it into the cloud, you've got all that already documented. It's all set up. It's
code.
resilient, right?
Those kinds of pieces. It should run regardless of where you are.
No. It's a good exercise to go through, whether you're using on-prem or you're in the cloud or you're in a hybrid situation, right?
Absolutely.
One can pair it for the other. Vlad, thanks for taking a few minutes to come by today.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate it. Hang tight 1 second. This will wrap it up for the day. If you're watching on the live page at SiliconPrairieNews.com/live. Thanks for watching. We'll see you.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.